Welcome to Elevate, a Women's Leadership Institute podcast. We've been in the trenches with CEOs and entry-level workers for a decade, offering the value and vision of a more gender-equitable workplace. In a state where male CEOs lead 95% of the businesses and the state legislature is 74% male, we've had some work to do. This podcast showcases individual stories, celebrates successes, and explores what is still needed to shift culture as we seek to elevate women's stature and status in our state. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Elevate, a podcast from the Women's Leadership Institute. I'm your host, Patty Cook. I am joined by the ever-lovely Pat Jones, who's the CEO of the Women's Leadership Institute, and our dear friends from Ken Garff, Dana Geddes and Joe Barnard. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming. We're excited for this conversation today. I just want to give a little bit of background about Ken Garff for those who don't know. You are in multiple states, 9 states to be correct, with 73 dealerships and over 6,000 employees. So it's quite a large organization in many different states. And we've started working with you through our Elevate Her Challenge. So I want to kind of lean into that, into retaining, hiring, and promoting women. But before we get to that, I want you each to just describe what you do at Ken Garff and then share something a little personal so our audience can get to know you.
Go ahead, Dana.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
You want me to go first?
I absolutely do.
Okay, so Dana Geddes. I am the Senior Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. I've worked with the Garff Group for 24 years. And something that might surprise people about me and probably gives a little bit about my personality is that during the 2002 Winter Olympics, I was a backup dancer for KISS.
You were not.
Yes.
They pulled you out of the audience? How did you get that?
So my mom actually and my husband on the same day heard it on the news that they were doing auditions and said, you need to go for this. You need to apply and do it. And I laughed and I was like, yeah, right. And so I did it. And I went and auditioned and I was the mom of the group. I was the oldest one and I had to protect everyone from Gene Simmons because he was.
No offense, Gene.
He was scary.
That could be another podcast.
Yeah, man, that's
another
awesome.
kind of, I like to just go for things. So that tells you a little bit about me.
Yeah, it does. Very fair. Okay, Joe.
That's awesome. I'm Joe Barnard. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for Ken Garff. Been with the company for nearly a decade now. Love the company, love the family. We do the right things for the right reasons, and that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but I've loved working with the company. I'm a pretty boring guy compared to Dana. I don't back up dance or
So not true.
You are KISS, maybe.
Or
maybe
do
that's
anything.
Oh,
hidden
there you
in
go.
I'm kind of in the thick of raising some kids, and so we're at ball games and camping and doing all the things that you do there. So that's what I really enjoy doing, is spending my time there.
I love that. And he's quick-witted, very quick-witted, which I really enjoy.
He keeps us laughing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for introducing yourselves. Pat, anything you want to start out with?
Well, I would just say I could not be more delighted to be with the company that truly lives the Elevator Challenge promise. And they have just jumped in full-fledged and have been a source of inspiration, motivation for so many different companies.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for letting us be a part of WLI. It really has changed the way our company and the way that our leaders and the way that our women look at our future and their potential individually and as a company. It's been really remarkable to be a part of and to watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's made a world of difference, I think, in how we are able to recruit, the confidence that our employee base has, the normalization of everyone working together. And so it's made a huge difference in what we try to do.
Thank you. Let's put some time frame on this. So couple years?
We're probably more like 4 years.
Okay.
4 years we started talking about it and we realized we had this huge population, this huge community that we were not tapping into, this untapped potential.
Yeah.
That it's like, wait a second, we have, over 50% of our customers are women.
Yeah.
And yet only 14% of our sales advisors are women. So, hey, let's take a look at that. And let's start thinking about what can we do more for women. And then it was cool to start watching and be like, oh, wait a second. We actually have a lot of amazing women already in our organization. And so we got Pat involved, and it was incredible to have our CEO, Brett Hopkins, really wanting to be a part and saying, hey, we need to do more. We need to provide opportunity. So it was really fun to be a part of our first year as WLI. And then you see these women, because we've all been a bit of unicorns because we're in these different dealerships, right? And they don't know about each other because they're working in separate stores.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they make these bonds and they realize I'm not alone. Like there's other women here. And so it's been really fun, little by little, to see over the last 4 years the growth that has come from just simply focusing on it.
I love that.
It's so important as you undertake a journey like this to have really smart people who are fair and honest. And, one of the things that Pat would say over and over, we're not blaming and shaming. We're just trying to figure out and get it right. That was so huge to what we were trying to do. When you take out the stigma of somebody screwed up here or somebody's wrong.
Right. Someone's in trouble.
Let's just get this right.
Yeah.
Then it becomes far more productive. And we leveraged Dana and Ninye, who's our VP of DIB, and they're some of the smartest people in our company, some of the most well-connected people in our company to tell us the truth and to really listen to them. And it's a little bit of a hard journey, but you see the progress, and it gets really, you get addicted to it because it's the right thing to do.
And Patty, I think it's helpful to understand the business case here, because
Absolutely.
When Brett Hopkins first called me, he's the CEO of Ken Garff Automotive. He said, Pat, we have a problem here. 20% of our employees are women, and yet we have 2 dealerships that are 40% women, and they're killing it. One was in Orem and one's in California, if I remember. And so it was a business case at the beginning.
100%.
What happened?
One of the statistics I took to our CEO early on when I joined the company was we were turning over 116% of female salespeople in the first year.
In their first year?
In their first year, yeah. Okay. Meaning we were going through some twice. And so for me, that was a canary in the coal mine. If our environment, if our culture, if our structure isn't sufficient that anybody could come in and succeed, and these women were indicators that it wasn't, then what is it like for everybody else? And so it is a business necessity. Employees don't quit companies, they quit people. And that was a hard reality. We've got to have better leaders, better people to take care of our employees. And this journey was fortuitous because then we went into COVID, and it was about trying to take care of our employees, and it gave us an opportunity to try what we had been learning. Employees obviously became at a premium during that time too, as everyone was trying to hire employees. And so I think we got our unfair share compared to the auto industry. We've been down around 25% turnover for the last 4 years, which is maybe astonishing to some people in the wrong direction, but in the auto industry, the norm is about 50%. And so we've done better than most. And I think it's because we've leaned into some of these things.
I love that you've said a couple times that it started with a conversation, right? With the business case of noticing what was happening. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was worth doing. And something that we talk about a lot at the Women's Leadership Institute is that to really make this happen well, it has to be from the top. So the fact that the CEO caught the vision and, as a vice president and senior director caught the vision, that it can really take hold. So I want to kind of go into the developing of these seeds of change that we've been talking about. Dana, talk to us about the programs and coming to our program and then watching other women come and how that kind of trickled into the company.
It was really fun to watch that first year because none of us knew what we were getting ourselves into.
Yeah.
And to stop and look back on who attended that and the growth that they've experienced. We have Becca Anderson, who had been a regional employee and was overseeing the stores for the region and helping with sales and different things. And just thought, one day I want to be a general manager. One day.
Yeah.
One day. And because of WLI, she was like, and because of Jason, an amazing ally, and people seeing it in her and helping her see it in herself, it clicked. And she is now the general manager of our Land Rover store downtown Salt Lake and is killing it and just doing an amazing job. But that was the amazing part of being a part of WLI, is that it helps women see their potential and see, oh, wait a second. It gives them this like permission almost to have confidence and to say, I can lean in and I can be a part of the conversation. I do have something to say. And so, you know, every single woman that's gone through it has experienced this incredible growth. We put those women on the spot on panels and had them talk to all of the women at our We Speaker series, which is Women Empowered. And that was incredible. And one of the best parts of the whole thing, there were, what would you say, 6 to 8 women on that panel. And it's all virtual, right? So they're all in their individual dealerships, but we're talking to women and leaders all over the company, right? In those 9 different states. And everyone was so articulate and did such an amazing job. And when we finished and said, we're signing out, before I could push the, end meeting button, one of the women just got so excited and said, we did it. Oh my gosh, we did it. And they all just celebrated one another. And everybody just was commenting, saying how cool that they were all like excited for each other and happy about how well it went. And so it's helped women elevate women, but it's also helped the male leaders elevate women. And then what Joe has said so many times, so good, I won't say it as well as he does though, is that when you elevate women, you elevate everyone. And man, we've watched that happen. We've seen everyone elevated because we're focusing on the right things.
If I could just jump in, I think you're referring to the career development series that we hold once a month.
Yes. I keep saying WLI, but WLI has so many different programs. So thank you. Yes.
And
we CDS Career Development Series. So thank you for mentioning that.
And you fly in, I think, 4 women every month to attend those classes. We have 105 women in it with a waiting list. And so we travel to a different company every month who sponsors them. And these are mid to senior level. So we're seeing change happen because of great companies like the Garff Automotive Group.
Well, and so we have, you have a lot of people wanting to come to Career Development Series. And so we had to go through a process of narrowing down, like, who would the 10 be? And last year we had people come from California and Colorado and Wyoming. This year we have people come from California, Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona, and Texas because they got word of the Career Development Series. And we had so many wanting to be involved that we're like, okay, we need to open it up and make it possible company-wide. It's that impactful.
I think the senior leaders have been impressed with the gratitude that these women express that we've invested in them. They see that as the company believing in them and putting some money where their mouth is. And they'll remark over and over, the leadership will remark over and over of how grateful these folks are compared to anything else we roll out. We give a brand new PTO plan and people are ho-hum and grateful, but these participants in WLI are emotionally grateful. They just are in disbelief that the company would invest so much, and the senior leaders will remark that wasn't very much. And so it's been an ROI, an emotional ROI from the leadership to feel really good about what we're doing, and I think that's also an important part. And so, as Dana said, there's a waiting list. There's a long line of folks that want to participate.
That is such a great perspective. It's really interesting being in these cohort and watching these women come. They not only network with other women and then go back, as you say, and there's an ROI, but they network together. Like, we all know who the Ken Garff people are, right? They are all networked together. And I think that as they go back I really appreciate how you've created a culture that allows them to practice the leadership that we are teaching them about. Like, I think that that is the sweet spot that they come, they get permission, confidence, hone their skills. And then when they go back, they have a space to actually practice that and use it.
I would love to hear from Joe, because Joe, you're a person that I cite in most of my presentations about how some of this training and how men and women think differently and the value of gender diversity and our complementary differences, how that is not just something beneficial in the workplace, but also at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my own life, I have a daughter who I'm crazy about. She's amazing in every way, but she's a little bit non-traditional. She wants to be like her brothers in so many ways. And so for me, it's caused me to think differently. Sometimes I overlook or don't invite her to participate in things like mowing the lawn or different things that I've just decided in my mind are traditionally the boys' work or what have you. So it's caused me to just open the invitation, and she invariably always wants to participate. And so it's allowed me to be a better father and to be more inclusive of her. And whatever you do shows up other places in your life. And for us, that's important, that our leaders are good people in the dealership and at home. We build people and they build our business. And so that's important at home as well. As I think about what we're also trying to do is provide opportunities, I think, for our women to, and all of our employees, to network. I certainly have gotten into the positions I've gotten to because I knew people. I had experience with people. I had opportunity to sit at the same table. And so by providing not only the opportunity through WLI, but through our champion program for them to sit in leadership meetings. And someday one of them or somebody in their cohort will get promoted somewhere and look back and say, I've got to have Dana on my team and pull her forward. And so these opportunities to see people in their best light and in different micro leadership roles allows them to envision them in a greater role and pull them forward. And so, yeah, Pat, I think the beauty of true principles is they just carry through into the other aspects of your life. And that's a huge deal for us. Bob Garff, who's passed away, if he drilled anything into my head, it was that, Joe, take care of my people. These are like my family members. Invest in these people. Help me build these people.
That's really beautiful.
In fact, that was our last conversation with him before he passed.
Really?
He passed from COVID. He was the second person in Utah to pass, and he was leaving for Palm Springs. And Joe and I were in a meeting with Brett. I get teary-eyed even thinking about it. And he came in and talked to us and said, please promise me that you'll take care of these people. They're my family. And it was so weird. I remember after he said that, I had this thought come to my mind, like, that was almost like he was saying goodbye. And he did believe in that. I mean, working with Kathy Garff, she is remarkable. She's our chairwoman of the board. And having her come along, and like, he had a strong woman in his life, and he championed strong women. And so, yeah, you've definitely carried on the charge of what Bob asked you to do. That's for sure.
We're lucky to have Brett too, and the other leaders of our company. I mean, Brett, as Pat said, it doesn't happen if the leaders don't buy in, and Brett is absolutely leading the charge on this as well. So between John Garff and Brett Hopkins, they really give you the air cover in terms of our leaders being able to really lean into this and to try in their own way to figure it out. And we make tons of mistakes. Yeah. And that's maybe the other secret is you're just not going to get this right,
That's right
out of the gate. You're going to say dumb stuff. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip a little bit as you try to do the right thing. We tried to design a parental leave program. And by the way, we've done it for the first time in company history.
Yay,
we have a fully paid
congratulations.
parental leave program, but as we were trying to figure that out, the initial meeting was 9 men sitting around discussing what was the best thing for a new mom. And of course, we were experts on it. And so the irony after we kind of figured that out wasn't lost on us that maybe we ought to talk to a new mom. And so you just learn.
Did you know that yourselves, or was it a new mom that was like, hey?
I mean, somewhere in the conversation, Jason Frampton, who's one of our great leaders too, said, well, I'm glad that we've got the experts in here to discuss this. And it kind of caused us to chuckle and pause and say, yeah, let's take a break and involve some people that might have a good opinion here.
Joe and Dana, I remember Brett talking about the numbers behind this and seeing his charts. He was very metric driven.
Yes,
and what was the metamorphosis for him as he was looking? I mean, did you see a change in him, and what caused that?
100%. Candidly, there was probably twofold. He had a really annoying VP of HR that would continuously put people data in front of him.
Who might that be?
Yeah.
I firmly believe, again, I said it a little bit earlier, people quit people, not companies. And I could just show him empirically over and over that our employees through exit surveys and other places were quitting because they had a bad experience with their leader, or they felt unseen, or they didn't belong, or and that we needed to do something differently there. You look at the turnover rates that we had. You look at in particular, some of our non-traditional groups turned over at a higher rate, and that you can't explain that any other way than maybe we need to change what we're doing a little bit. Then you look at the employee base and the population base. We're more than 50% women in the population base, and the employee base is 40+%. You're just not very smart. And I mean that about us as leaders. If we don't fish in the whole pond, if we're not considering the entire talent pool, we're just ignoring a way to help the business, and that's not wise. On top of that, I think Brett had daughters entering the workforce. That never hurts as he starts to see some experience that they have, and the difficulty getting an internship or getting training or getting your start and getting a foothold and getting respect. And so you start to see those little nuances as you have life experience too. And all that kind of came together. And so, yeah, there was a change for sure. And Brett's a great leader. And so Brett's also not emotional about stuff. When you show the data, when you have someone like Pat come in and talk to you and give you the aha moments of, hey, we should do this better. Integrity means that you change when the data causes you to think differently. And that's one of our values. That's our respect, integrity. Our values are right, R-I-G-H-T, and the I is integrity. And so it means that we change. It means that we adapt, even if that's painful.
I can say, having been there and presented to Brett 3 times that he asked me to, that I could see the aha in his, but really the humility that he was feeling. It was almost emotional for him. When you say he's not emotional, I felt it there, that he could see, there's something amiss here. So he was teachable. And
I think that right there is the biggest difference. And if I had any piece of advice for leaders, especially C-suite, is to ask questions and listen. Because that's something that's, I don't think it's easy for him because he does know so many of the answers. But I watched him metamorphose because he was getting experts like you, Patty, in the room. He also at the time of George Floyd and, police riots and different things, he pulled in people from the community of all different ethnicities to say, help us understand. And little by listening, his eyes were opened, his heart was softened. And from the time that I started to the time of where we are now, he has changed. He's willing, right now because of our economy, we're looking at our expenses and saying, okay, let's be careful. But this is one area that he is like, no, it gets me emotional. It's like, no, this is necessary. This is needed. This is what we're doing. We're not going to take our eye off of this. So yeah, it is emotional for him because I think his heart has been softened and he realizes there's power in these women and men that we can change lives, as you all said earlier, in not just professional and business, but in homes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. So that ripple effect that you've talked about and true leadership, I feel like you're talking about true leadership, right? That ability to be, we heard it the other day, is hungry and humble at the same time, right? That's really value aligned with what's important to you as a company. That's one reason why we at the Women's Leadership Institute last year gave Ken Garff our A. Scott Anderson Ally Award that we give to a company that we feel is doing really great work in this area. And so I just wanted to point that out and congratulate you. And it's even reconfirmed as we're talking to you today that was such a wise choice because you're doing such good work and not only impacting individual lives, but also the company bottom line and how you retain and promote women.
Thank you. It was such a huge honor for us when we heard that we were getting that award. It just because we feel like there's still so much work to do. We felt a little bit undeserving, but what a huge honor. And it's just been in our front office of our corporate office. We have our award, and it's every time I see it when I walk by, it just makes just a lot of pride and feel really, really good about what we're doing as a company.
Yeah, it's reinforcement, right? Dana said we felt super inadequate of us. We're just trying, but we certainly felt grateful for it, and it's evidence that we're trying to do some good things, and so we were really flattered by it. I think what it represents, because it represents that we're trying to take care of our people. And we're trying to see all of our people. Mm-hmm. And so for us, inclusion, and it has, so many meanings to so many different people. But for us, it means that everybody feels like they're a part of a winning strategy. And that's important to us. Belonging. We want our employees to feel like Bob described, family members. And so that's not a hard or difficult concept for us. We just had to kind of put it in our own way and embrace it in our own way. Diversity certainly to some represents ethnicity and gender and some other things, and it does. But to us, it also represents the very unique population that we have as an employee base, and to love what Brett would call their freakish talents. Everybody is spiky. Mm-hmm. He would say he's come to the conclusion we don't need well-rounded people because most people aren't. We're really spiky. We're really good at a handful of things, and then we have some blind spots.
He'll say, what's your freak-like attribute?
It's kind of, yeah.
I really like that, yeah.
People off guard, but a great team is a collection of these different strengths in aggregate, and so we want balanced teams, not necessarily perfectly balanced people.
Have you seen this kind of leadership and kind of awakening permeate the different dealerships? I mean, to what degree is it actually bleeding out from the top down to the retail stores?
Yeah, gosh, I think getting the water to the end of the row is always the challenge. And so we, anecdotally look for some evidence. I think our biggest evidence is the turnover battle that we're winning by cutting that in half. I think we had 476 promotions on the service side last year, which was a record. In total, we had nearly 1,000 people promoted, which is a record. You start to value people individually and differently. That's the beauty of trying to look at groups that you may have ignored a little bit or passed over a little bit. As you start to see everybody a little bit better, it bleeds into other areas. Anecdotally, all of these general managers come forward and are anxious to share, mostly with Dana, because she is the most positive person you'll ever meet. but they're really excited to share with us what they're doing to take care of their employees, whether that's creating awards, which, by the way, is something we struggle with a little bit, is recognition. They're kind of on their own saying, I get it. Increased one-on-one connection. So we do exit interviews, but that's kind of postmortem, right? And they've started to do what we would call a stay interview, which is where they're sitting down and spending professionally personal time with employees to say, how are you doing? Never mind the numbers. How are you doing? And do you feel engaged here? And is there something I can do to help you feel differently about your role so that you're more engaged? Those interactions, as you hear the GMs and the other leaders talk about them. So there's certainly the statistical evidence and the metrics there to back it up, Pat, but there's also the feeling, the momentum, the anecdotal evidence that it's making a difference.
We have data that show that the biggest reason why women leave the workplace is because they don't feel valued. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're doing is describing what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And I would guess, I'll just say, that I think that's one reason you have cut your retention rate or increased your retention rate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think of one of our controllers in Texas that on her own volition decided, hey, I've got all of these employees, mostly women, that work in these entry-level positions. If I'm really going to affect them staying around with us, I've got to show them a path forward. So they have a monthly job shadowing program where they bring in someone from a department and say, this is what you'd have to know to move into this path and into this path. That's in some entry-level positions that are normally high turnover, has really bent the curve on that to where they stay a little bit longer with us and they approach other job opportunities. So absolutely.
It's very important for people to know that what they do is important to the outcome or the end product.
Yes.
It sounds like you're doing that very well.
Yeah. Another initiative that we have that has made a huge difference, and we know that it's affecting every single store, we call it 0 zeros. And that means that we want in the two most customer facing positions, service advisor and sales advisor, that in every single store, we want at least one woman that's a sales advisor on the team and one woman that's a service advisor on the team. And we have just seen great growth from that. We have 92%, something like that, in the 90s, that 90% of our stores at least have at least one woman sales advisor.
What have you seen as an outcome of that?
Oh, it's huge.
What is it?
It's so fun because it's so interesting because a lot of the general managers, male general managers, will be like, they're doing it to check the box, right? Because that's a mandate. It's not a mandate. It kind of is, but it isn't. Ninye and I are working with the general managers and talking it through with them and helping them. But then what happens is you have one woman that will start and they end up changing the whole dynamic of a team. And then they're like, wait a second, we want to get another woman. And then you see the team start to grow. I met with someone this morning that now has 6 women sales advisor on the team. And so they start to see, wow, this really makes a difference. And the other thing that I would add to everything that we're saying, I think originally when we started talking about it as a company and saying our goal is to have 30% women, a lot of the men said, oh, yep, see, you're pushing us out. You're pushing us out.
The scarcity mentality.
Yes. And Ninye, I get chills thinking about it, but Ninye has said at our last leadership meeting, there is a seat for everyone. Yeah. There's a seat for everyone. And so it doesn't mean we need you to move aside because we're moving in. It's just we also get a seat and there's room for all of us to succeed. And that's been really fun for the men to see that, oh, we're not trying to take over. We're just saying, let's continue to add to what we already have.
Adding space.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
One of the things you're always trying to evaluate from a human resource perspective is, are our job descriptions written in such a way that anyone would feel like they could apply for the job? Is our training structured to help everyone see things and not from one perspective. And so, as we start to consider some of those things and do some things a little bit differently, as Dana said, it's not a mandate for us. It's an aspirational goal. There isn't if you don't do this, you're standing in the corner.
Yeah.
It's because what it means. If our jobs appeal to anyone, we're going to have the best opportunity to pull the most talent into our workforce. And that includes women. There's nothing about selling cars that has anything to do with gender. 53% of those that buy cars are female, and they're 80-something% of the decision-making process, a significant part of it. And so one example is one of our employees in Texas named Erin. She, our GM liked Popeye's chicken. He would go to Popeye's pretty frequently to grab a chicken sandwich, and he met Erin there and kind of built a relationship and was just so impressed with her customer service and her customer facing abilities, and said, "Hey, why don't you try selling cars?" And she thought, I don't know if I'd be any good at that. And he convinced her that she would be. She's our number 3 top salesperson
in the whole company.
I love that story so much.
Isn't that the best?
No automotive experience. I don't think she would fancy herself an expert on a GMC truck per se or anything like that. Or
did that general manager, it sounds like he was into the culture of that. Was that part of it? Is it because that is such an important, passionate plea?
He was part of an acquisition. And so this was even a little bit newer for him. But him coming in.
He's natural at it, though. He's got this outgoing, fun personality. So it's also part of who he is. He fits our culture.
When you convince a leader to be looking for talent wherever you find it, instead of what you're traditionally used to, all of a sudden you start to see people you otherwise might have passed over or walked past. And so that's, some of the side benefit. Again, whether you look at this from doing it the right way or whether you just strictly look at it from a numbers standpoint, it makes sense in both to see talent where it exists, and that exists everywhere around you. So it's been a huge benefit.
The other part that's really cool about that is when you talked about the promotions, and we were notorious 4 years and back, we were notorious for letting people go and then being like, oh, well, we're going to go find the next greatest salesperson outside. And it's, oh, well, he's a 20-car guy. We got to hire him. He's a 20-car guy. And then they'd come and work for us a lot of times, and their values did not match our values. They were not a culture fit. As a matter of fact, they a lot of times caused a lot of chaos and a lot of drama.
Sure.
And so we've started to promote from within, and there's women have been a big percentage of that, and they're realizing that, oh, wait a second, we have talent here. And so they're looking at receptionists and BDC employees and looking around. And because they're having those one-on-ones you talked about, they're finding out like, oh, wow, you don't want to be a receptionist forever. What are your goals? What do you want to do? And so we're seeing women step into positions that they never would have before. And so you all will know the statistics of this better because I don't. But like on a job interview, how they'll say if like 60% of the men, if you have 60% of the qualifications, a man will be like, oh, then I'd kick butt at this. Whereas a woman feels like they have to have 100%. Whereas now that we're having these one-on-ones, women are saying, yeah, I actually think I might like being a service advisor. I might like being an HR manager. And so we're able to provide these paths and training for them to actually step into these new roles. And in fact, the second group that came through the career development series, as we were talking to them, I would bet 75% had started as a receptionist.
Really?
Yeah. And then now they're in leadership positions. And so it's cool to see those promotions.
It's really cool for me to hear what you're speaking about because it touches on so many things we teach at the Women's Leadership Institute, right? The first one is women often need to be tapped on the shoulder. And your example, Joe, of the girl who's like, I've never thought about selling cars, but someone saw that potential in her and gave her an opportunity. And she's like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. there is such power in doing that for talent and then allowing them to practice it. And the other thing I love that you said is really cultivating this pipeline within your organization, right? The retention rate of bringing people along instead of bringing people in is so much better for an organization. So those two things I'm really impressed with.
Do you have
that you
numbers?
shared
You
today.
said the retention rate has really increased.
Mhm.
Do you have numbers attached to that and how much you've saved because of that?
Yeah. Yes. So for every person that walks out of what we call KGO, Ken Garff on-ramp, the
Okay.
onboarding process, by the time they step foot in our dealership to begin, we've spent about $3,500. And so when you start to decrease your turnover, it's $2.5–3 million in savings that we've had as we start to cut that in half. And we figure for every dollar that we save, it's about $5 worth of gross. It's a straight dollar for dollar to the bottom line. You can make more impact on the bottom line by saving some money. And so, yeah, there's a dozen other metrics that go into that. In our technician space, if we can retain a technician, I won't share the secret sauce of those numbers, but they are extremely valuable to the company. And the longer that they have in the chair, the more experience they have, the more that they generate. And so those are all important. And to snowball onto what Dana said, these are true principles. And so we had a record amount of women promoted, and that is true, and it's awesome. At the same time, we had a record amount of men. The principles translate. And so we always do worry about the men in our organization feeling like somehow they're left behind or left out. That's a real emotion. Whether it's rational or not, doesn't matter. It's a real emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to see, and that was one of the powerful metrics that we put in front of Brett and others, is to say, this is lifting everybody. This focus on the employee to do this better and do it more right actually benefits everybody. It's a good thing for everybody.
I hope you got a promotion.
I am right where I want to be.
Because you
Pat,
gave good advice.
I'm right where I want to be.
He did.
Oh, that's fun. There was a story that you told, Joe, that I'd like you to share about. We've been talking about retention and meeting with women and men sooner to say, where do you aspire to be and how can we help you? But you shared a story of an exit interview that I think is really telling and might be interesting to our audience. Would you mind sharing that again?
Of course. It's kind of a miss for us, candidly. And so...
But we're all practicing, and that's what I really like about it, too.
Yeah. We had hired a female technician. And by the way, only 3% of the technicians in the U.S. are female. So Dana said unicorn. There's truly a unicorn. So we'd hired a female technician at one of our stores, and she was great. She was doing fantastic. The dealership was really happy with her. And I participated in helping to find that individual. And so all of a sudden she abruptly quit and gave her notice and left. And the dealership called me and said, hey, we've tried to save her. You know her. Can you reach out to her and see if we don't want her to go.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to this employee and said, hey, help me understand. Oh, I'm so devastated. Why are you leaving? And she expressed that she was also a little melancholy about it, but felt like this was the best move. And so I asked her, are you getting more money where you're going? And it was nominal. It was about a wash. And I asked about, is it closer to home? And it actually wasn't. It was even a little bit further. Is the environment better? No, the shop is definitely nicer where she was at currently with us. And so we went through a series of these questions. And I finally, in kind of exhaustion, just said, well, why are you leaving then? That doesn't make any sense.
You're like, help me out.
And she said, it's just the extra time that I have to spend at the dealership that I don't get paid for. And now my HR heart sinks because I'm like, oh no, we're not paying somebody appropriately, and that's a legal issue. And I said, gosh, you're going to have to help me understand that. And she said, well, I have to wait, either come in a half an hour early or wait a half an hour at the beginning of the day. And then I always leave a half an hour later than everyone else at night while I'm waiting. And I said, what are you waiting for? She said, well, to get in the locker room. There's only one locker room. And we had recruited this phenomenal talent, but we hadn't considered the next step. Is there a space for her to change? And so we had just missed. And so it's one of these things that we have to think ahead and have to build and have to create an opportunity for someone to succeed, and to think through that process of what that looks like a little bit. It would have been easy to throw up our hands and say, she couldn't hack it. That wasn't it at all. It was us. We had made the mistake. And so, there's the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. There's some real truth in that. You have to be constructed for everyone to succeed. And when they see themselves and see an opportunity to succeed, they typically stick around and do succeed.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that story has so many layers of things to learn from it. I just appreciate you sharing it.
Of course.
So, as we close out, I want to ask, what can Utah, because we're based in Utah, we're a statewide organization, what can Utah do better in helping companies understand the additive value of women? And what's something really great that we're doing as a state? Whether it's policy or politics or whatever that looks like. What are those things?
That's a good question. I mean, Utah has a rich history of successful and strong females, from politicians to Olympic athletes to a number of other spaces. And so I think we're doing some of those things really well. I think, Pat's initiative is a key component, and the fact that the government, the governor, others have recognized the need for that and have invested in that are all things that I think are important. I think, again, maybe back to this building and being constructed correctly, we have to think a little bit down the road. It is difficult, and I think we may have towards the higher end of proportion on moms returning to the workforce than most other states. We don't do that very well, I don't think. I don't think we've thought ahead. I don't think we've built the proverbial locker room, if you will, for someone returning to the workforce. It's often not easy to just jump right back in at 40 miles an hour, 40 hours a week, and get going like that. And so it's helpful, I think, to consider that and provide opportunities for someone to come back. And that investment in them is usually repaid to you with an investment back into your company where they stick around. Dana is an example for that. I can't imagine where our company would be without Dana and the investment we made in her all those years ago. And she's still with us today. And so I think we have to be more thoughtful on how we take not just women, but non-traditional employees, and to think outside the box a little bit. Sometimes that's job sharing. Sometimes that's reimagining the workspace. I spent 10 minutes cleaning up a break room in Iowa when I was there this week, thinking, man, I don't like the look of this place. And so a new employee would probably be a little bit disappointed by this. And so it's just being a little bit more thoughtful on how we approach the workspace, the work environment, job opportunities, scheduling, all of those. Recruiting. Are we recruiting in the same old places, or are we recruiting in different places to find different people? We get largely what we're built to get. And so sometimes we have to do a little bit of reconstruction.
Yeah, I like that. Dana.
We're an incredible state. I love Utah. I love living here. I love all the opportunities that it provides. I would say one area that we can really improve in is diversity and having a space for everyone, for sure. Unconscious bias. I think there's we have some ideas.
We don't know what we don't know.
We don't know what we don't know. And the more that we can educate ourselves and educate others to understand that different is good and it's okay to be different.
Yeah.
And there's not a box that we all should fit into, that we're all special and unique, back to our freak-like attributes, right?
Yeah.
And that everybody has a place. Everybody has a spot. And so the more that we can, I am a byproduct of returning to the workforce after staying home with my little kids and having a place that let me know I belonged. And that was everything for me.
Yeah.
And then, man, to look at myself all these years later and be like, boy, have I been blessed. And I want more women to have that opportunity. And we need to, I think in the workforce we have this box. Well, we open it this time, we close it this time. And if that doesn't fit for you, then you don't work, this doesn't work. And we have to open up our minds and say, okay, we got to think differently. We've got to be more creative and give more opportunities to people instead of what we've always known. Let's think differently. Let's be creative.
I love that. Creativity, deconstruction a little bit to open up space. Pat, any final thoughts?
Yes, I just was thinking how important it is that you are showing in a great example of focusing on people's strengths instead of trying to fix their weaknesses. You're really looking at them, at them as humans, as different humans, and how can we add to their strengths and how can we leverage those strengths rather than trying to fix something that maybe is not quite as good in that person.
Pat, you caused a thought for me, if it's okay.
No, please, yes.
I've taught this over and over, but the currency of leadership is time. Currency of parenthood is time. And for us, we've spent some time listening. And when you sit down and you listen to somebody, they become different.
Up close.
You start to love them and appreciate them. And then you start to advocate for them and you start to help them and you start to become a support to help them get ahead in their dreams. And so for us, listening is incredibly important. And for us, the time spent is incredibly important. And so you love what you serve and you serve what you love. And a leader's job is to serve their people and to take care of their people. And when you do that, you build a powerful emotional contract that generally has a ton of ROI for that leader. If they can just embrace that and figure that out, they'll be great.
Especially, I think it works for everyone. But there's something about doing that with women because you can have a preconceived notion as a leader as to what another person needs or wants.
Yep.
But until you take that time and ask questions, that's when you start to really understand what is it that this person needs. And it happens one person at a time. And then you can help them grow. But you can't just assume that you know what people need until you ask them and act. With women, we have found in our industry, oftentimes we have to ask a few times before we get
I was going to say.
Well, and I think what Joe did with the woman, why she really left, you didn't take the first answer.
Right.
You kept digging because you sensed that there was something deeper than that. You asked the right questions of her. And did it with, I'm sure, an empathetic ear, knowing you.
I truly cared for this human being. So, yeah, absolutely. It makes all the difference, Pat, when, we teach this, that the basic needs of a human being, of an employee, are stability, trust, empathy, and purpose, right? And that's a leader's job. And when our people fail, we fail. They are not unmoored from one another. And too often, it's easy when someone's failing to say it's their fault and we just need to fire them. But then we say, hey, we're a big family here. Well, you don't fire people from your family. You work through tough stuff. And so, yes, we want to listen. We're not perfect at it. We are really trying to get good. But it is our tagline. We hear you. So we're trying.
I was just going to say that. As I was driving down here, I saw the billboard, "We hear you." And this whole conversation just shows that you are actually putting that into practice. Yeah. And what a great leadership skill that is. And like I've started tearing up because I'm like, yes, like what a beautiful world it would be if we just sat down and were human with each other, asked questions, created belonging. That would affect not only our home lives, but our professions. So we've come full circle on our conversation. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, for the work that you do and your commitment. And we will see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.